The Allen Line Company appreciates all of the dedicated carriers it takes to move loads across the U.S. Stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
Earlier this week, the Francis Scott Key Bridge carrying Interstate 695 collapsed into the Patapsco River after being struck by a container ship. And that raises some questions and concerns about what's next. I'll discuss that and a regulatory update from FMCSA with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. An OOIDA member has been named one of Goodyear's highway heroes. We speak with the trucker who risked his life to help stop a man who was fleeing after shooting at a state trooper. And finally, Marty Ellis has some thoughts regarding what we've learned about a collision involving a large truck and a bus and what it says about the accuracy and reliability of ELDs. I'll talk with the man who drives the spirit of the American trucker. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. We continue to follow the deadly collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Maryland and its impact on the supply chain. First responders have shifted into recovery mode and discussions are starting about what that looks like. The National Transportation Safety Board is leading the investigation into what happened. NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy says that process could take up to 2 years to complete. The bridge's collapse has closed off the flow of ships in and out of Baltimore and cut off a major corridor for commercial vehicles. There is no timeline for reopening the channel into the Port of Baltimore. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, led by Executive Vice President Louis Pugh, has been holding talks with federal officials, including Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, about the response and the impact on the trucking industry and supply chain.
I mean, one thing we've been trying to tell them or help them with is so far is the routing. We've suggested alternative routes to trucks, like across the Bay Bridge on 50 and up 301. We've discussed the waiving of the tolls on the bridges and even at the tunnels to try to let traffic move through quicker. Another thing is the extension of the 2 hour. We have this 2 hour thing in hours of service where there's an unknown thing like weather related or something like that, adverse conditions, I guess. Well, I understand that they say traffic's not one of those usually because you know when there's going to be bad traffic, but this traffic is going to be mind-blowing, and we have no idea how long it's going to take because we're putting so much traffic over on these other arteries of the city. So maybe it'd be the extent of allowing truckers an extra 2 hours to get through there as a kind of an exemption.
As for the alternate route suggested earlier this week, Pugh said not much has changed there. In the meantime, expect lots of traffic and lots of delays.
Yeah, I would say be prepared to adapt and be patient. I know it can be very frustrating, and people in other cars and people doing dumb things get very frustrating, but there's probably going to be a lot of that happening. We get a lot of cars in one space. Somebody always seems to do something stupid. So just be patient, maybe pack some extra food or snacks or something because you may be sitting in traffic a while.
Much more on OOIDA's discussions with federal officials next week, right here on Landline Now. After a small dip in December, cross-border freight hauled by trucks rebounded in January. According to the latest numbers from the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, truck freight valued at more than $79 billion was hauled across the borders in January. That's up nearly 9% from December and up more than 2% compared to January of 2023. Cross-border freight hauled by trucks across the U.S. northern border rose by more than 1% compared to a year earlier. The value of freight at the southern border went south, though, dipping 3%. Barring any new legal developments, congestion tolling is coming to New York City this summer. The city's Metropolitan Transportation Authority Board approved the plan this week. Starting in June, it'll cost most passenger vehicles $15 to drive into Manhattan south of 60th Street during daytime hours. For commercial vehicles, the toll could be as high as $36. The idea is to encourage more people to use public transportation to reduce congestion, cut down on pollution, and raise money for subway system and road improvements. New York City officials expect the program to generate $1 billion in revenue each year. A number of laws lawsuits have been filed in opposition to the plan, but the MTA board is forging ahead. If the tolling survives all the legal challenges, New York City will become the first U.S. city to implement a congestion pricing scheme. The American Transportation Research Institute is asking for driver feedback on a new survey dedicated to detention time. The confidential 23-question survey is asking drivers for details about their experiences and how detention time in general affects their day-to-day life, professional livelihood, and perceptions of the industry. ATRI says the survey is part of a larger study being conducted that examines the effects of detention time. The deadline to weigh in is April 26th. The ATRI survey comes on the heels of a similar study conducted by the OOIDA Foundation, which released its findings in February. Andrew King, assistant director of the OOIDA Foundation, said that the average respondent spent a combined 14.3 hours per week loading and unloading,
which is quite considerable when you think of the hours of service regulations, which is why this is really problematic. I mean, it's problematic in other ways, but when you only have 60, 70 hours of driving time and you're losing driving time being stuck, and how that can trickle down and just affect everything.
King told us they also asked respondents for solutions to the detention time problem and got some interesting responses.
Yeah, it is a hard thing. I mean, the two that come up the most probably when we ask this question is ELDs. I mean, people don't like ELDs, obviously, but they can use it to their advantage in that they can track detention time. The other thing is making it mandatory on like the bill of lading, where you put in the in and out time so that you have that documentation. And then, of course, having some form of accountability for shippers and receivers, because basically, you're just a free warehouse for them.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to make them hurt somewhere in their pocketbook, obviously, is the biggest thing. So something along those lines is what they envision.
You can check out the OOIDA Foundation's latest detention time survey at ooida.com/foundation. To take part in the ATRI survey, head to truckingresearch.org. 3 professional drivers will share the honor of being this year's TA Citizen Driver Award honorees. Travel Centers of America says Tim Taylor, along with team drivers Steve and Gina Jones, were selected from a pool of more than 140 people nominated for the honor. The Citizen Driver Award was created to recognize truckers who demonstrate a high level of respect to the truck driving profession through leadership, good citizenship, safety, health and wellness, and community involvement. Award recipients are given the opportunity to select a TA, Petro, or TA Express location to be dedicated in their name, with a ceremony marking the occasion. Taylor selected the TA Atlanta South site located in Jackson, Georgia. The Joneses chose the TA in Tonopah, Arizona. Since its inception in 2013, TA has presented 44 professional truck drivers with the Citizen Driver Award. And finally, for the first time since they started the program back in 1997, the Truckload Carriers Association is honoring more than one Highway Angel of the Year. In fact, there are 3 this year. Tony Blunny of Knight Transportation, Donna Jacobson of Herb Transport, and Terry Rivas of Maverick Transportation share the honor. Blunny for saving a woman's life following a crash on Interstate 20 in Jackson, Mississippi last year. Jacobson for shielding an injured boy from oncoming traffic after he was involved in a snowmobile accident on Highway 11 in northern Ontario. And Rivas for rescuing 3 children and helping an injured woman after a devastating crash on Interstate 95 in Brunswick, Georgia. For their heroics, each winner gets a complimentary Epic View satellite TV package. Since 1997, TCA's Highway Angel program has been recognizing professional truck drivers who have selflessly helped others while on the job. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to Gregory D. Lebowski of New Haven, Connecticut. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 6 years of safe, accident-free driving. Starting April 4th, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the Oklahoma City East TA. That's located at exit 142 on Interstate 40. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, OOIDA's Jay Grimes describes what's next after the Baltimore Bridge collapse. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Buckling up keeps everyone safe on the roads. Learn more at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov. Paid for by FMCSA.
Earlier this week, the Francis Scott Key Bridge carrying Interstate 695 collapsed into the Patapsco River after being struck by a container ship, and that raises some questions and concerns about what's next. Welcome back to Landline Now. This is Regulatory Roundup, and I'm Mark Rettig. I'm joined, as always, by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Well, good to have you here. I wish it was a more pleasant topic. Certainly a bad situation there in Baltimore. But on the federal level, they appear to have already moved to the point to talking about rebuilding this bridge. What's the state of those discussions right now?
Yeah, certainly still in the early discussions and early period for, massive response that's going to need to be going on for, what could be years and decades to come in the aftermath of the collapse. But, heard from President Biden saying, the federal government is going to do all it can do to help rebuild the bridge, fully reopen the city's port and make sure that, the supply chain challenges that this is going to cause can be remedied as soon as possible. And, all of that easier said than done right now when you take a look at the state of Congress and how you get funding approved in a quick manner. But when it does come to, infrastructure repairs, that does seem to be something that usually gets everybody on board. But this is going to be a whole lot of money, a whole lot of effort to rebuild. So I know we heard from President Biden, we've heard from Secretary Buttigieg, heard from lawmakers. Everyone seemingly seems to be united in supporting the relief effort, but it's going to take some time to get some federal funding, some congressional packages compiled and approved before we start seeing actual money get delivered on the ground.
This is not our first situation like this. In fact, we were talking in our morning meeting, the Landline morning meeting, about some of the previous instances of bridge collapses. I think the most recent was the 2007 I-35W bridge over the Mississippi River in Minneapolis. How did the federal government respond to that situation at that time?
That was a pretty efficient response from Congress back in 2007, an emergency supplemental bill providing $250 million toward rebuilding the bridge emerged following day, signed into law just 5 days after that bridge collapsed. Unanimous passage through both the House and the Senate. Certainly some different dynamics at play right now. Congress is on recess for the next 2 weeks. Certainly the Key Bridge, much bigger, longer, and it's completely gone. So there's no cost estimate yet for the rebuild. And, in the time since 2007 even, Congress and funding dynamics have, taken a lot different changes. A lot of that has to do with some budget rules. A lot of it more so has to do with sort of some partisan dynamics at play. And we can, in other instances and other urgent emergency relief situations, we have seen some delays to get that funding through.
What are members of Congress saying about the situation and possible fixes, or have any of them spoken out yet?
Yeah, certainly. I think first and foremost, we've heard from the Maryland delegation who, is going to be supportive of immediate funding as soon as possible. I think they're taking an optimistic approach and want to make sure that there's no impediment for the use of federal resources and that they have enough funding to cover this. But really, at this point, no clue on what the total cost is going to be. And this is going to be so widespread, not only just in terms of the physical replacement of the bridge, but how are you going to replace the supply chain? How long is the port going to be closed for ships to get in there? And what other, gaps are going to have to be filled throughout the supply chain?
I'm curious, and I know, of course, you said we only really heard from the Maryland delegation, but within that delegation and hopefully Congress overall, does there appear to be some bipartisan support for acting quickly on this?
Yeah, I think that's the sentiment and the emotion that I think comes across in these emergency situations. But until you have that dollar figure attached to legislation, you never quite know how it's going to unfold. But I think within just we're not even 48 hours since the collapse, and we've already seen significant federal, state, and local response. I think that will continue, and hopefully once Congress returns, they can at least have some substantive discussions and perhaps a package in place within the next few weeks.
Obviously, there's already money in the federal government or federal budget for transportation. There's a lot of emergency funds built within the whole structure of the federal budget. What can the federal government do in the meanwhile before or if Congress doesn't act?
Yeah, certainly there was a whole lot of funding that was allocated to DOT through the bipartisan infrastructure law. We heard from Secretary Buttigieg today at the White House kind of explaining some of the resources that DOT has at their disposal through some of the funds that were created by the bipartisan infrastructure law. So I think there's money at play that federally DOT can kind of get out to the states without the approval from Congress. So I think there's some actions DOT can take. Certainly there's going to be some more actions that Congress is going to have to take too.
You mentioned, of course, that this is closing down the Port of Baltimore because the remains of the bridge are blocking the passage between the port and the open ocean there. Is there any word from the feds in terms of how they plan to address that in the short term?
Not specifically, and that was asked to Secretary Buttigieg today. He was asked if there's going to be a timeline on when the debris from the bridge, the ship can be cleared so other ships can kind of get back to the port. He would not give a specific timeline on that effort, but I think he did say that's going to be a top priority. Certainly, a lot of the investigation is going to be ongoing for the next few days, but I think that's definitely going to be a top action item is to get that channel cleared and try and get back to normal as soon as possible. But given the nature of the situation, it's going to be a long-term process.
Okay. Well, let's move on to hopefully a little bit more pleasant topic here. During the recent Mid-America Trucking Show, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration provided an update on some of its regulatory plans. The agency's acting deputy administrator, Sue Lawless, reviewed some of the things the agency is doing to try and make truckers' lives a little easier, the good news part of the good news, bad news equation. What are some of the programs and efforts that she talked about in that regard? Yeah,
and addressing the Mid-America Trucking Show, acting deputy administrator Lawless went through a few different rulemaking updates. She highlighted FMCSA's work with the truck leasing task force that actually held a meeting down in Louisville last week to address predatory lease purchase agreements. So continue to hear, and I think we heard a lot of stories from drivers who have experience with lease purchase agreements. There's a public comment period on that open through early next week that closes April 2nd. Also said the agency is involved in studies looking at driver compensation. This is another effort emanating from the bipartisan infrastructure law. Other studies looking at excessive detention time, grants provided to states to address truck parking shortage, and efforts from the Women of Trucking Advisory Board to identify challenges for women in trucking and more. And the agency has got a few rulemakings that they've put out and some information that they've put out in regards to those studies, specifically the detention time study. I know there are some pending rulemakings related to some recommendations from the Women of Trucking Advisory Board, and we continue to see truck parking grants get allocated from DOT, from Federal Highway Administration throughout the country, still waiting on the much-needed Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act from Congress that could open up the door for $750 million dedicated to improving truck parking capacity. But DOT has put out hundreds of millions of dollars in grants on their own end just within the past couple of years. So those were some of the positives. A couple of other things still in progress. There was a lot of talk about this new registration system to improve transparency and efficiency and user experience of the agency's registration systems, and most importantly, to reduce fraud. Some things that are coming out that we might not be so supportive of include the final rule on automatic emergency braking and a proposed rule in terms of autonomous vehicles, but not sure what those rulemakings are going to specifically include quite yet until they're released, probably within the next couple of months.
Okay. Referring to that technology there, did the deputy administrator offer any new information on those technologies or efforts by the agency in regard to those?
Not that I heard. We've got the autonomous vehicle proposed rulemaking is being currently reviewed at the Office of Management and Budget. It's been projected that could come out as soon as next month. A lot of times those projections get delayed, kind of the same deal with the automatic emergency braking rule. There was a joint proposal from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and FMCSA last year in terms of this requirement to mandate AEB technology on not only commercial vehicles, but all vehicles. We thought the proposal focusing on heavy-duty trucks fell a little short in kind of addressing a lot of the concerns that we've heard from drivers who have experience with automatic emergency braking. That final rule, again, expected to be out by next month, but we'll kind of wait and see. I know that's going through the public review comment period right now.
Something else that was on the list of topics there is broker transparency. Very, very big topic. And we had a timeline on that when we were expecting, or at least FMCSA said they were hoping to get something out. What is that timeline, and are we still on that timeline in terms of when we can expect something from the agency?
So the timeline, unfortunately, was delayed. Has been delayed a couple times. We first got word that this rulemaking was going to be published about this time last year, right before MATS, and the agency said they were going to initiate a rulemaking process to improve broker transparency. The initial word was going to be out by June of last year. And then we heard late last year it wouldn't be out until October of 2024. So that's the current timeline. And based on comments from FMCSA last week, they're still working towards having that out by October. And when it hits the streets, they encourage all public comments to come in. So kind of a good news, bad news update there. But, also I think did hear some positives on some presentations related to the unified registration system. And it's clear that FMCSA has gotten the message that broker fraud, broker transparency is a top concern for the industry and for drivers. Always wish they would move a little faster when it comes to solutions that would, definitely help the driver's side of things and not so much of this technology stuff. But that's where we stand right now on the broker transparency rulemaking.
And they certainly do love their technology. It's just always in the federal government for some reason. Well, Jay, we just got a few seconds. Is there anything else people need to be aware of out of that?
Unified registration system, they're going to have another industry stakeholder day on May 29th. Haven't heard the official details, but expect an announcement soon.
Very cool. Jay, thank you very much.
All right.
I've been talking with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget misaccuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. A heroic act back in June of last year is being recognized by Goodyear. The company recently announced the winners of its Highway Hero program, and Tim Van Ostrand was one of them. We spoke with him last year about the incident that led him to receive this award.
Pretty normal day. Was going down an interstate with a load of pulpwood on, and seen a trooper pull a car over. And so we get over in the left lane, slow down to go around when any emergency vehicles. When I got up just about to the trooper car, see somebody stick something out the window. I wasn't 100% sure what that was at that time. But anyways, what it was, he was taking a shot at the trooper with a pistol. And by now I'm right up to the trooper car or the car he pulled over, and I could see the bullets flying out of the back window of the car that the trooper had pulled over. They were shooting at the trooper. I got stopped as fast as I could, and the car tried to take off, and I got slowed down enough to kind of turn into the car and put it against the guardrails and stop it so the trooper could take control of the situation.
I caught up with Tim recently to ask him about being named one of the Goodyear Highway Heroes. Tim, how did you feel when you found out you were one of the winners of this award?
Surprise, shock, nervous, everything, really. Didn't expect it, I guess.
And when did you find out that you had won that?
God, I don't know. It's been 3 or 4 weeks now. Actually, Cody, I can't think of his last name, from Goodyear, called me and told me.
And what did you get for winning that?
They give me and my wife a trip to New Orleans. They paid for our airfare down and back, paid for our room, plus give us $1,800 spending money for that trip. And let's see, they're sending me some more stuff. I'm not exactly sure what.
Now, the situation that happened, I know we spoke before about it. You got to meet the trooper that was involved, right?
I did after a couple months later, but yes, I got to meet him. He's a great guy.
What was that like?
Oh, I was looking forward to meeting him. Everything was so hectic that day, plus he was wounded, so they had to rush him out of there as soon as backup arrived. But it was really good, because him and he went through a lot worse than I did, obviously, but it was great to meet him. Such a nice guy. And like I told you before, I know I got a Highway Hero Award from Goodyear, but I really think the trooper was the hero. He fought, he gave it his all. He never backed down at all. He was 110% all business. He was really professional.
What was it like to meet him, afterwards and to get to shake his hand and hear from him?
It was a relief, really, to see that he was doing good. I guess certain people in certain situations, that could have affected somebody else differently. Maybe a little mentally. Well, it didn't him. He seemed very good with the way every outcome was. It was really a pleasure, my pleasure, meeting him. It was my honor to meet him.
When you got into trucking, did you ever imagine you'd find yourself in a situation that kind of seemed like something right out of a movie?
It was definitely something you see on television. No, I never expected to see anything like that. And it's nothing you can ever prepare for. It happened so fast that, you literally have to react or not. And again, you just hope like how you made the right decision. And in that case, it was.
That was OOIDA member Tim Van Ostrand talking about his heroic act that led him to receive the Goodyear Highway Hero Award. Joe Hildebrandt is Director of Commercial Fleet Sales, and Cody Adams is the North American Communications Manager for Goodyear. They join me now. Joe, can you tell me what the Highway Hero program is and how it all works?
Yeah, so the Highway Hero was an award that was established back in 1983. It was a way for Goodyear to honor truck drivers who, while being on the road, act selflessly for basically helping individuals who are in a time of need while driving across the country, whether in the U.S. or Canada. So basically going above and beyond the regular duties to keep the highway safe.
And how do you get the stories in of people? Do people get nominated? How does it work?
Yep. So nomination is exactly right. So basically, we do kind of a call out to the industry, looking for nominations of individuals who have gone above and beyond. And really, it's from all across the industry. So we can hear from fleets, we can hear from private drivers. Basically, we look for the stories of what took place, and then we take that to our committee to review.
Now, I've been at this job for about 2 years, and I've heard of countless incredible stories of truck drivers going above and beyond. Do you know roughly how many applications you get in or recommendations you get in?
Yes, I can answer that one, Ashley. It really varies by the year. Ultimately, we don't really have a set number that we are striving for or that we even like to report. Honestly, there's a high entry for this kind of contest, for this kind of opportunity. You have to be a truck driver. You have to see something. You have to, someone either has to nominate you or you have to nominate yourself. And so it's kind of a hard thing to gather entries for. So we are really focusing on the quality versus the quantity. We're interested in hearing all those amazing stories that happen, and we don't really keep a sharp eye on exactly the number of entries we're getting, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And the committee you have, they review all these stories. Who is the committee made up of?
So and I'll answer this one too. So there's an internal committee made up of our marketing team. We have our legal team, as well as some other leaders across the company that are invited to participate. That's what makes up our internal team. And then we also have a panel of media judges from trade media, and that varies by the year. This year, being the 40th year, we made sure to include our friends at Heavy Duty Trucking that originally helped us start the contest. But those are kind of the two groups that help us make the decision.
And I assume it's not an easy decision to be made. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, as we read these stories, and I apologize, but as we read through these stories, it's really quite amazing some of the scenarios and situations which these drivers are put into and their act of selflessness. I mean, if you look at our two grand prize winners of 2024, I mean, the fact that Tim was in the middle of a shootout and utilized his truck to literally help blockade and protect people, it's fascinating. I mean, people are making really quick decisions and they're being selfless and putting themselves in harm's way to protect others. So it's not easy to make these choices. And it's fascinating to read these stories and truly be in awe of how brave some of these individuals are.
Now, you mentioned Tim. Can you walk me through, there's 2 winners this year. Can you talk to me about each one of them and their stories?
Sure. So I'm in regular contact with both Tim and Elijah, so I can jump in and tell you a little bit about them. But Tim is the owner-operator out of New York, and he drives logs. He works with the logging industry and is moving timber up and down the state of New York. He came across an incident that was unfolding in front of his eyes. There was a suspect that went going past him, going really fast, followed quickly thereafter by a police officer or a state trooper. there was the state trooper pulled over the individual. Then the individual started to shoot at the state trooper, and Tim used his truck to pin the suspect's car to the guardrail. And then there was a shootout that occurred over about 12 minutes, and the suspect and his girlfriend fled the car and followed in hot pursuit by the state troopers. At the end of the day, what we really liked about Tim's entry was, number one, how quick he acted, and just like Joe said, used his truck to help people. But he also had enough forethought to contact other truckers that were ahead of him and behind him and ask them to stop traffic. And so not only did he jump in, but he utilized his network to help other people make sure that they were safe. And at the end of the day, one of the things that's in common with both these stories is that it could have been a lot worse had it not been for their quick thinking. The other winner this year is Elijah Ramos from Victorville, California, and he's a driver for Ryder. And he has a different story, but still the same impact. It could have been a lot worse. He was driving very early in the morning in a remote stretch of highway in California and witnessed a young lady take an abrupt left-hand turn, think a 90-degree turn across 2 lanes of traffic, across the median, across another 2 lanes of traffic, and ending up in a field. And Elijah saw this happen, pulled over, called into his dispatcher to get emergency services on the way, then went over to help this young lady, help her get out of her vehicle. She was injured, and stayed with her until emergency first responders could arrive. And it took them about 45 minutes to get there. So that just kind of emphasizes how out in the middle of nowhere they were. And if Elijah hadn't jumped in and hadn't thought to get emergency services on the way, this could have been a lot worse for the individual. And he was able to stay there until she was taken care of. And then the most amazing thing, at the end of all this, he got back in his car and finished his run and made sure his load got delivered. So he was still focused on doing his job even after helping other people.
Now, the 2 winners, what do they win for being awarded this?
Yeah, so I can jump in on that one too. So there's a couple of things. They receive a trip this year. They received a trip to New Orleans to kind of commemorate the TMC or the American Trucking Association's Technology and Maintenance Council event taking place in New Orleans. They had a 3-day, 4-night trip there. They also received some cash. We gave them a nice cooler, a TV, and some branded Goodyear swag. So they got a trip and some prize money and some goodies.
Nice. Now, this is the 40th anniversary of this award. What do you think has allowed this awards program to carry on for this many years?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question, right? So 40 years, and it certainly has evolved over the years, but it's, for the future, we continue to look to gather additional nominees, right? Continue to grow the recognition of it, work with media sources like yourself to continue to get the word out. It's just a way for Goodyear very easily to thank individuals who have, again, demonstrated courage and going above and beyond in an industry which is a very tight, close-knit group. So, we hit 40 years this year, but we're definitely looking forward to the next 10, 15, 20 years of it.
And lastly, why is it important to recognize these people who have gone above and beyond?
Well, I think every person that who puts themselves in a situation to protect others, it's important to see and recognize them for modeling what other individuals in the industry should be striving to do. We as Goodyear, again, as such a tight-knit group in the trucking industry, think it's really important to recognize those people and continue to instill that type of greatness, I guess, or that desire to do great things in the market.
That was Joe Hildebrand and Cody Adams from Goodyear talking about the Highway Hero program. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Capital Reman, your leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Let us help you avoid costly downtime and repairs by visiting capitalreman.com today. Use code OOIDA10 to receive your member benefits.
Stock up on Howe's Diesel Treat, the nation's most trusted anti-gel. And to be safe from the harshest winter conditions, make sure you have Howe's Diesel Lifeline on hand, the fastest-acting gelling rescue product. Available nationwide, Howe's products are designed to keep you rolling through the toughest conditions. Visit howesproducts.com.
Attention professional drivers, are you behind on your tax filings? You owe money? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. You watch the road, we'll keep an eye on the IRS. Call now. 855-976-4291.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now. Welcome back. Every week, we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. Marty was back at OOIDA headquarters this week after his annual trip to the Mid-America Trucking Show in Louisville, Kentucky, and he has some stories to share about the big show. But in the meanwhile, he also has some thoughts about what we've learned about a collision involving a large truck and a bus and what it says about the accuracy and reliability of ELDs.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Well, Marty, how are you doing?
I am lovely, Mark, and you?
I'm doing great, and welcome back from the big show in Louisville.
Yeah, we made it back last night just in time for the rain.
Oh,
so
good.
I don't know if that was celebrating the return of the Spirit at headquarters, but that was a welcome sight that it came after I came in, so that was all good. It was a good trip back. Got to see some of the trucks that were at the show, as we were traveling along, so we got to wave and say hello on the CB, so that was kind of nice.
Well, that's neat. I always like kind of seeing ones that I recognize from being at the show when we're on the highway on the way back. That's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah. Now, the only problem, though, is when your boss is following you, okay? And I'm gonna out him right now.
Okay.
Okay.
We're ready.
He sends me a text, okay? And it pops up, that it says, text from Louie. Of course, I'm not going to grab the phone and look at the text. But that gave me a heads up that they were coming by because they took a picture of me, of the truck, when they were coming by. And I have to say, he had something hanging out the window, okay, when he went by.
Okay,
fully clothed, though.
Okay, because people couldn't see my facial expression right there, but I'm like, and what would that be?
So, it is great that, we can have a good time, and, we all know that the job has to get done, but people are people, and we have a good time with it. So we were able to honk and wave, and so it was all a good time. But, yeah, it was just kind of funny. It's like, you do know who you sent a text to, right?
Yeah, people who should know better. Example one.
I've had it happen from a motor carrier officer send me a text.
Of course, we're just joking here.
Right. Yeah. It was just so funny. It's like, really? But it's just kind of ironic.
Yes, it is. Well, what were some of the highlights of the show? I mean, what were some of the things that kind of stood out to you from Mid-America?
There was some beautiful trucks. Okay, not as many older trucks as I've seen in the past, but some just beautiful builds. And I don't know how these guys do it, but they come in and they spend. I got in there Monday morning, and there were guys that must have been there like the Friday before because they were already out there polishing and wiping and. It's amazing how clean that they can get some of those trucks that actually run up and down the road. So that was, to me, the highlight. And then, of course, seeing so many people come through the trailer is always a highlight for me. I always have to apologize to people later because you don't have a lot of time that you can invest in each person that you want to. But most of our members understand that, and they kind of go along with what's happening. And if we're slow, then they stick around longer, and if we're not, then they kind of let the next guy in. So that's pretty cool.
Well, there you go. Well, let's talk about some of the things happening in trucking right now, because I know there's a lot going on here besides Mid-America. And one of the things that you mentioned before we started talking here is a recent accident involving a truck and a bus. And something kind of stood out to you there. And I'm wondering if you can explain to folks kind of what it is that caught your attention about that incident.
Yeah, I just reread the story, and I saw like an update where the driver had, I don't know if he brought it to their attention, law enforcement's attention, or if that just happened to come out in the, interviews and all. But that the company that he was pulling for were actually manipulating the logs to make it look like you have a co-driver. And a lot of people have been calling it a phantom co-driver. And they know if they get pulled over that they have the knowledge to say, okay, now I dropped my co-driver off at whatever the last city was. And I've had people come in the trailer and talk to me about this, where they literally have to stop somewhere so that way they can say, documented that, we dropped off Frank, that Frank doesn't exist, okay? Mm-hmm. And so you have another, set of hours that you can work with. And I hope that a lot of people that are in that situation will rethink this whole thing after this accident, because even though that was brought up to law enforcement, that's not going to be an excuse at all, because just because your boss is doing something or saying to do something, if it's not legal, that's going to be on you. Hopefully it'll also be on the company. But is that extra pay that you may have gotten worth the risk out there? Because it seems like there's more accidents, people are driving faster, and that one time that it does happen, your whole life can be over. Whether it's the time in prison or, the fines, the litigation on, owing somebody, millions of dollars for the rest of your life, is it really worth it? And I wish people would stop, think about it a little bit. It might be benefiting you right now, but in the long run, it won't.
If you're working for a carrier that tries to make you do that, you're working for the wrong carrier.
Absolutely. There's a lot of jobs out there, and you don't feel like you're trapped in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, of course, we've said this many times on the program before, but we urge people to call FMCSA or get online and contact them that way and report these incidences of coercion. And this is coercion. It's just a different form of it. Real quick, the number to call if you want to call is 1-888 DOT-SAFT. You can also go online to the National Consumer Complaint Database. And I know that name's confusing, but that's the name of it, the National Consumer Complaint Database. It's there to report coercion in the trucking industry. And, of course, call OOIDA and let them know that you've made one of these reports so that they can follow up on it. It's just a mess when someone tries to do this, and we really, really hate to hear about it.
Right.
We got about a minute and a half left here, Marty, and you had mentioned something else here about some problems with kind of trashiness that you're seeing in some of the truck stops. What's going on?
Yeah, it's just, you would think that most of us spend a lot of time in the truck stops. I mean, whether take your break or whatever you're doing, getting your food, doing your laundry. But we still have so many people just rolling down the window and throwing out their bag or their bottle or, whatever they have. And it happened the other day in Dodge City, Alabama, and it could have happened anywhere. But I was inside the trailer, and I looked out and it's like, oh, there's a pile of trash plus a bottle, and this guy pulled up right next to it. It's like, oh, please don't run it over, okay? So I headed out there to go, bring the trash can out there and to go pick it up because I didn't want this all over the parking lot. And I think that's part of the problem. Some of the time it does get all over the parking lot. And that gentleman was actually on the other side of his truck getting a bag out to pick it up
Well,
too.
that's good news.
Oh, it was fantastic news. So I was excited to see the driver that wants to help fix the problem, not just let it be.
Okay, well, we're down to just a few seconds left here, Marty. And you got any final words for folks before you go riding off into the sunset?
Hey, guys, just be kind to one another and give that guy next to you a break.
Brothers of the highway, children of the wind.
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop on our show and every day at our website, landlinenow.com. That includes truck stops, truck shows, and other special events across the country. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.